bare. The grass would have been bunch grass rather than pasture grass, but this is why they set it completely across the land. The Applegate Trail comes in over the road there, and their donation land claim was originally 640 acres, a square mile. And this is why they came here, for the cattle and horses and the grazing. All these trees and stuff have grown up since then. So this is all huge prairie, Indian created, and Letitia was one of the very first settlers, her and David, and the baby that was born on the trail.
So even the fir trees went up on the hill?
Those were all seeded in mostly.
Much more dominated by the oaks in this area. Yeah.
There was scattered oak savanna. There was a willow and stuff in the marshy area here. And then the prairie out here, probably largely camas. There's camas ovens along the Soap Trail.
Thanks, Bob. Thoughts about how you're feeling, having gone through the ferry portal, and thinking about how you're feeling about today and getting familiar with this place and this story. Just anyone want to share a couple of words?
I'll be vulnerable real quick.
Sure.
I'm a homesteader myself, and being a black woman with land and just really thinking about Letitia and just like her first impression of this land. So honestly, I got goosebumps.
Great.
When I was going.
Thank you.
I think it takes a lot of courage, to take on this large amount of land, especially a single woman, black woman like herself. There's still a lot of challenges similar to that today. So I think it's took her a lot of courage and strength to overcome a challenge like this.
Thank you. Yeah.
I feel like the process is, kind of hearing and remembering those heroes, and I feel like I'm here to remember, a really true superhero.
That's wonderful. All right. Well, let's. But you don't have to just keep listening to me. If you have things that you want to share about how you're feeling, please, I encourage you to talk with one another. We want you all to have at least learned one other person's name before you.
I put it on the lowest setting, HD. So record a lot. The AK, you only can record like 5 minutes. You mind holding my tablet for a second? I was trying to record, but it was on 1%. I didn't think I was gonna record on this. That was gonna be too much memory, but it's doing fine so far.
I want to make sure everybody has a chance to see this huge bloom of camas. Flowers here. This is greater camas. It is, like I mentioned before, a traditional food source for many different native tribes, and for this area in particular, the Lucky New Band of Kalapuya-speaking people who were here at the time of Letitia Carson, and obviously much earlier than that. Let's see, I could really use some volunteer help. I'm going to look to my younger friends. Could I get one of you to please read what's on this card? Yeah. You can skip that if you want.
Okay, common name. Great commas, common commas, camas, cultural, ecological, historical, science. Bulbs traditionally cooked in pit ovens, often for days at a time. Important sample of the
Kalapuyan.
Yeah, that's a tricky one.
diet and part of the traditional trade economy. Supports many native species as food source.
Thank you. Yeah. So we've learned now how you would actually cook this. The bulb that grows underneath each of these flowers would be cooked for long periods of time until it has this sort of delicious sweetness, and it's like a starchy sort of food that would be eaten, traded, and the abundance of it is, like I mentioned, something that we didn't know anything about. It's been one of the great surprises of this project.
Have you tried it?
I haven't. I've had a similar plant that is closer where I live, out on the coast, called wapato, which is another sort of traditional food, kind of starchy tuber, but I've never tried.
You need a slow cooker for it.
Have
You've
you
got to cook
tried it?
for a day or two. It's real starchy.
Lauren?
I
I was just going to say we have a project with Indigenous Studies faculty and archaeology faculty here at OSU to build relationship with the Camas here on this land and then 3 other OSU properties. And our hope is that by tending Camas and clearing more space for it, that we will bring more and more of it back. And we would love to actually harvest some of it, and we're planning to do some soil testing and some herbicide testing so that we make sure it's safe. Yeah, that is the plan. Oh, Bob, can you hold on to, because I'm not even sure I'm allowed to have
Oh, okay.
other animals on this place.
How about if I just put a leash on her?
If you could carry her, I'm just really,
Okay.
I think the Animal and Rangeland Sciences folks would not be pleased with me. I'm
Ah.
sorry. Anyway, so Camas, incredible resource, and we're trying to just learn with it over time. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna keep moving. They're really distinguishing because of the big bright light, the tops of flowers that pop up in these huge leaves.
He said that's the only thing you can eat is the stem.
Analyze it later.
15, 20 foot high.
It's,
Blackberry that we
yeah, no, it's, oh my god. Give me a second. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so it's the one that has the disease going around. Yeah.
Wow. So I have a guy mowing every week during this heavy season. College of Bush,
Oh, it's another group.
that they have mowed and mowed and mowed and finally exhausted the bacteria. So Mike is using it just on other side of the central. He's really happy to see his fence again.
Yep.
Zachary, I was wondering if there's how much
Well, you know, the deal for blackberries isn't a poison, it's a hormone. And the developers think that tomatoes grow faster, but then they outgrow the roots. And that's what happens with the blackberries. And so you, at 1%, and you put
Wow, look at that.
chemical dye in it, and just light coating, and you can spray a leaf and miss another one.
Come on down, come on down. So we just had a great question from Travis. You want to ask you again?
Oh yeah, I'm Todd.
Todd, I'm sorry.
Hey, it starts with a T. It was
Got
close
that T
enough.
wrong, yeah.
But so I was wondering with the high density of camas here, they found in other places that tends to be correlated to where village sites would be because it's a managed resource. So when you have high density, that's probably even now, it's a lot of times tied to where villages were. And I was wondering if there's any signs of any local villages close to this water source or to the camas patches here.
I think that that's one of the things that we're hoping to find out more about. I don't think that we have enough information yet to say that there could have been a village here, but this absolutely was a place that was used very frequently by the indigenous tribes that have lived here for so long, right? And we know that from the archaeology that we've done, that we were looking for material related to Letitia Carson, right? And what we were finding was elements of cultural use related to burning or small lithic fragments, so things that indicate use by indigenous peoples. And then there's a huge area up here that we call sort of the native garden, where we know that there's food sources like camas that are in such a dense cluster that it indicates to us that it was actually cultivated and intentionally created in that way. Yeah. Thanks. So this is a spot, if you listen very, very carefully, you can hear very faintly the creek below us. As we go on this, there's going to be other points where you're going to hear it and it's going to be much louder. But this is sort of the first opportunity we have to really think about this creek and the fact that this is what gave life to this whole region, right? This creek is really what keeps this area green, and it was the water source for Letitia and her family every day. This is also right about where we had a crossing on the Applegate Trail. So it went through the Davis claim and parts of the Carson claim, and Letitia and David probably sold produce to travelers who were using the Applegate Trail, which of course was a way by settlers came to Oregon via California during the pioneer era, and then during the gold rush era, many of them went to California to to get gold on that same road. So this was a busy place of crossing, and this was a good opportunity for the Carsons to be able to have a way to have like direct market farm relationships, right? So the cattle that they kept were producing milk and cheese and butter and things that they could have actually sold to people traveling through here, as well as all the fruit, potatoes, and anything else that they might have created here on their homestead. So as we continue to walk, I encourage you to stand right about here and just try to give a listen to the creek. Hear the sound of the water, okay?
Oh my gosh, it's a bee. It's a bee trying to fly around my face. It's these little bees.
You're asking about villages. This had a bunch of Camas ovens along the creek, so people were here and probably stayed for long periods of time. But the villages were probably the Marys River and Lucky Mute River, and this is probably a trading, gathering, processing center. So there would have been a lot of people here during times of the year, but it probably wasn't a permanent site, because that would have been the rivers hooked up to the Willamette.
That makes sense what he was saying, that a cluster of Camas was intentional.
Oh, it used to be like thousands of acres, coast to coast. Yeah, it was, this dark purple, I think, was raised as a variety, like delicious apples or something, because there's other colors in other areas that denote those. Like down by Roseburg, there's a pure white Camas. And I think that I took genetic samples a few years ago, but I can't get them analyzed.
Oh, it looks like I want to pet it.
Can I just stand on this side? I'm going to talk about something over here. All right. So, at the beginning of our tour today, I mentioned that you want to keep your eyes open because there are things that might poke you, that might sting you, and just you have reactions that maybe you weren't looking for today. We want you to have emotional reactions, not physical ones, right? And I want to point out a particular plant here that we have in our directory. And I wonder if I can get another volunteer who can read for me. Where are you? Aha. Can I get another volunteer to read? Yeah? Okay. Can I get you to read this one here? And if you have your directory, you can show people.
The whole thing?
Yes, please.
Okay, here's my Latin experience.
You can skip that if you want.
Okay. Well, it's interesting because it's toxicondrin, right? So that gives you a hint. Diversum, common names, Coanti trivet, Pacific poison oak. Cultural, ecological, historical significance. Leaves resemble the round lobe leaves of a true oak, though typically more glossy. Entire plant covered in an oily resin that can be highly reactive with human skin. Traditional medicine and fiber plant. Food source for some mammals and birds.
Thank you. So this is Quante Trut. I'm saying a lot of. We're trying really hard to get better at pronouncing it. But it's something that Todd has actually taught us a lot about. And when we would see this before, our gut reaction was to call it what? Poison oak, right? But we've had to change our thinking about this, right? Because when you hear poison oak, your first reaction is, oh, that's poisonous. This is harmful, right? But harmful to who? This plant has been here longer than we've been here, right? This plant has its own unique characteristics. It has its own relationships with this land and with other plants. And its original name is Quante Trut, right? And we tried to reframe the way that we are approaching this plant and every plant here to recognize that just because it might be something that makes us uncomfortable doesn't mean that it's wrong or that it doesn't belong, right? It's an opportunity for us to learn what are the things that it's good for? What are the things that it can give back that we haven't really considered yet, you know? Todd, are you able to share a little bit more about the relationship between this and...
I was about to tell you, I'd love to take credit for that, but I think that was someone else.
No, you're thinking of Joe Scott.
Are you kidding? Oh my God.
I mean, I can point it out, but...
No, thank you. What Joe told us then,
You remember what Joe
a little bit, was that Quante Trut has a relationship with hazel. They're not actually similar plants genetically, but you find them growing in the same place. and they give to one another. And hazel will grow better with Quante Trut. And that's when you cut Quante Trut, you're actually taking away something from hazel, right? And so that's just one of those reminders that we try to think about our relationship to this place and to different lands. And even our language, right, can communicate a lot about how we feel about something. So I'm approaching these plants a little bit differently now. You know, this is my new friend, Quante Trut. I know better than to get my hands all on it, but at the same time, it does belong here, and I don't have to treat it as if it's an invader, right? Because who's the invader here?
Say, Zachary,
Yes.
one of those hills over there is called Poison Oak Hill. And during World War II, they burned it, and the fumes killed 2 or 3 people. So and then we used to work in it. You don't even have to touch it. You can just have as it's heat, just the heat, the evaporation from it will give you rashes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's a live and let live.
I have a childhood of miserable memories. Covered in gooey, orange, oozing blisters, just sick as a dog.
Yeah.
So let's know what it looks like and know how to interact with it in the safest ways for all of us.
That means avoid it.
He does.
Yeah.
I used to teach kids environmental education, and I call it a guardian plant. You know?
Ah, tell me why.
Mainly because I think humans have this, you know, we want to dominate everything. We want to be involved in everything, but not everything is for us, and that's okay, you know? Like, we just live alongside it as opposed to approaching it, and it's guarding whatever's behind it, you know? We'll leave that alone.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
You get it.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on then.
Well, and Charlotte likes to talk about how, like, some, you know, like if you cross my boundaries too much, I might get a little itchy and scratchy too, you know. So.
I wonder for the hazelnut, the filbert that's growing here, if it's just less consumption of the nuts and whatnot by different creatures. So maybe it's helping that spread. But
Have any of you experienced?
oh yeah,
Poison oak? Okay.
not bad, but I've gotten it. But
Yeah, bad and not bad is a big difference.
yeah, no, the slight irritation, rinse off I was fine, but my neighbor went to the emergency room. Same reason, they tried burning a pile of it.
I passed out as a child. It just totally covered my body because I walked through the woods all the time, and I knew it was there, and I tried to stay away from it, let it be its own friend, but can't do it.
I know there's a woman in Philomath that doesn't react to it, and she has a business where she'll go remove it from your yard because she doesn't react.
Yeah, I used to play in it.
Never.
Never had a roach bed. Me or my
It was related to hazelnut.
no thanks.
Isn't there some kind of hazel that's
I rubbed against it, I washed it off, but I'm not trying to
Again,
find
I'm
out.
not really a plant person.
don't wanna
I couldn't
find
say. But we do have hazel in our directory.
Yeah.
So I'll give this to you, and maybe you can tell me later. How about that?
But it is the hazelnut. It's not the one that we grow commercially here, but it's a native relative. The one we grow here is actually from Turkey. The commercially grown one, it's Turkish. But
And in Oregon, they used to be called filberts.
yeah, no, it's older growers. I gotta say filbert. And
Yep.
Filbert.
yeah, but
Is that
And I thought they
Oregon
they
slang?
To sell them, just kind of like Lake Oswego, but the thing was that it was called hazel in the 1850s through here, so it was always called hazel, yeah.
where did the filbert come in colloquially?
I think when they started bringing it in commercial and it was just like tuna fish.
Yeah,
And so they changed the name of it to sell it. And I
The horse
thought that-
mackerel doesn't sell?
No, apparently not.
It's like sea bass and Patagonian toothfish.
Yeah. You were the one that was asked about a village. I was talking to them, but they didn't have a village here, but this is a gathering site along the central trails that led here. There's a massive amount of canvas, so there would have been lots of people here, hundreds probably. And there's camas out of the Blown Creek. They found out archaeologically that camas itself is a sure sign, but there wouldn't have been these factories and there wouldn't have been poison oak because they would have been burning regularly.
Right, because then the hillsides would have been managed oak.
Yep, oak savanna for the most part. There was some scattered fir here and there. That was Metzroy did the master's degree here.
Oh, that's right. You're showing me that they had.
And what I did was I looked at the vegetation patterns from 1850 when the first settlers came in. And Letitia, and that's how I learned about it. It was like, huh, yes, David's person. And then right underneath it, that was 320 acres. And then underneath it's 160 acres to David Carson, but it wasn't his estate, so that was odd.
Well,
All right, gather round, gather round. So I don't have a whole long extended thing to say here, but I just wanted to bring up the creek again, because from here, it's a little bit easier to hear than when we first started, right? And it's going to keep getting louder the further down we go. There'll be a chance to actually stand at the edge of this, but this isn't the safest spot. But again, I want you to make sure you have a chance to actually hear the creek running beside us. At different times of the year, it really goes. I also want to point out, just thinking about this space, right? Like, how much land are we talking about? Well, Letitia and David, when they first came here, they settled on 640 acres of land, which is 1 square mile of land. That's how much land was entitled to every single white male settler. And then after 1850, it was reduced to 320 acres, but if that man was married to a white woman, he could claim an additional 320 acres through her, right? So David, with his 640 acres, goes to Oregon City in 1850 to go and certify the land claim that he had been living on at this point since 1846. But they cut his land claim in half because he was not married to Letitia. And even if he was, as a black woman, Letitia did not qualify for that additional 320 acres the way that a white woman would have added to her husband's land claim. And so because of that, their acreage was actually cut in half. Now, 320 acres is still a lot of land, right? But obviously it's a difference, right? This is a family that saw their land amounts go down and none of their neighbors did. And when you think about the scale of that land, right? A square mile of land per household for all the settlers in the valley, you can see how quickly all the people coming here on the Oregon Trail were able to take over lands which had been occupied by native people. And in perspective, right? So looking out here, their 320 acres went from this creek all the way up to the foot, and then on the other side of the creek up to what is today the Dunn Forest, right? So it spans in the hills with timber on both sides. It would have provided everything that they needed, from their water to their firewood, their ability to grow crops here and raise cattle, their ability to sell things to folks on the Applegate Trail was all provided by this land. But in an instant, that land can be taken from them. All right, as we pass, be sure to listen out for the creek, okay?
So last year I listened to Dr. Whitehead give a presentation before she was no longer employed at the university because I passed on the I initiative. But so on the last lecture she talked about the interaction with the First Graders, with the people in the valley, and the introduction of European style agriculture in the community shortly before widespread European settlement in the valley. Yeah. And I was wondering if there's evidence that you know much about that period of time, because that's a very interesting period.
Yep. Yeah, well, it's getting more and more known. The Prince town, the Prince Prairie, was where the McKee settled. And when they set up the donation land claim, we were talking about if you were McKee, a half Indian, half white, you still qualified for land ownership. Black. So,
Yeah, you gotta wear Columbia's out here. For sure.
But yeah, when the Trappers came here, it's needed to
You want to get a little deeper or something? It's spot.
David Douglas and came from work with the Hudson Company, he kept the Daily Journal, so you can.
So Soap Creek gets its name because if you take a look at that water, you can see that it has that sort of cloudy kind of color, right? Has something to do with whatever minerals or sediment is actually in the creek itself, but it's always been that way, and that's where it gets the name Soap Creek.
How did this landscape fabric come to be too?
So over the decades, there have been many efforts to protect this riparian zone, do some reintroduction of certain kinds of plants, or introduction of non-native plants as well. And I think it has been a mixed bag in terms of its success. But that's probably a better question for Lauren or for Bob.
This is, and Larry reminded me, it was in 2008, there was a conservation reserve program easement in the riparian area, and that was U.S. Department of Agriculture. There's so many acronyms, like NRCS findings, to do restoration. And you can see there's still trees like that one. There are trees that did grow up to become trees. And there's still an awful lot of weed cloth and white basket, and over the last few years we've just been, and mostly last year and this year, we've been bringing garbage bags full of white plastic stuff out. But yeah, it's holding down some of the weeds, I guess. Guys who does some mowing.
Oh, more of that out, it gets in the mower.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. In fact, I got a contract to write a book about it.
I would be lost in here.
Oh, if it was all wooded, oh man, you.
A mountain, look at the mountain.
Huh?
Exactly.
Me.
Well, you said contract.
Well, the contract is from a foundation, and it's Cottage Grove Foundation. My business is based in Cottage Grove, so I've been doing the publication. So that was good for them.
Could I get another volunteer, please, to help me with some reading?
I could read.
All right, come on up. So we spotted a plant that I think is worth talking about. So if you could read this here, and what we're talking about is this plant right there.
Halo tortoise, common name, cat's ear, Tomes, cat's ear. Cultural, ecological, historical significance. Starchy bulbs used as a traditional food source. Consider a key nectar source for specialized pollinators, including the threatened Fender's blue butterfly.
Thank you very much. So it's called a cat's ear because, honestly, if you look at it, you can kind of tell. But it's so distinctive. We really love to see it here. This area actually is the area that we sort of refer to as the native garden.
Oh, no, it's just.
Is it up just ahead?
It's up on the other side of the crossing. Yeah,
Gotcha.
it's okay.
Well, when we get to it, though, I'll point it out. But can you help me
Yes.
remember what exactly have we found there that helps us to keep that in mind?
Yeah, it's sort of a Dennis Albert question, but yeah,
Yeah.
we'll do it. There is so much of this. Is a great year for cat's ear. It's everywhere. It's amazing.
Has anybody here eaten cat's ear?
No, but I intend to.
It's really tasty.
Yeah.
You don't have to cook it.
Oh.
You can dig it up and just eat it raw.
Cool.
That separates it from camas.
Would you dig it up after it's gone to seed?
I think anytime it's a bulb.
Yeah.
So
You don't want the energy to go back into it.
I don't
As
know.
long as you know where it is.
I used to
Be able
see
to
one and
find
then
it.
eat it. So
The bulb is what you eat, or the greenery.
yeah, the bulb.
What's the flavor?
It's kind of crunchy and mild.
Okay.
It's hard to compare to anything, but it'd be like celery without all the veins in it as far as texture. But that's what sets it apart from a lot of these other plants is it doesn't need any preparation. And it's really tasty.
Sounds like it'd be good with some peanut butter.
Oh yeah,
Everything's good with peanut butter.
Is it tart? Is it tart?
What? No,
Is it tart? Or
no, it's mild and kind of got a mild flavor.
Oh.
You should let us dig some up and eat them.
Well, when you come back in the late summer, fall, there's so many apples and pears on these trees.
And we're still trying to figure out which ones are good to eat.
Well, I think most of the apples and pears are wildings from the 1880 plantation. We found an orchard on the other side, and I think the beavers got into it after we found it, so we figured it was associated with their homestead. It was probably an orchard they put in. There's an apple tree along the road over there that is named the Letitia Thompson apple. And I don't think it's there anymore. I took a picture of it. They've got it in Kentucky listed that associated with it. They jumped to the conclusion that she planted it, which is good. So it's got a history and a fiction, and I think it's got so we got nice photos.
Good. Well, there's we call it our elder apple, which is right around. And then the elder pear tree, which is this big around. Never saw the pear tree.
Well, Greenberry had huge commercial orchards on his property, and then there's a lot of same reason we got poison oak.
Where are you coming from, Miss?
The Olympic Peninsula.
Olympic in Washington?
Yeah, by the Olympic.
Oh, that's
like
a
5 miles from the street of Wonderfuca, so I lived as small 6 people.
Oh,
But I've
wow.
been staying in Lion City with my dad.
Oh, okay.
What brought that here?
You check it out. Look up the definition. Invading the house was invading the prairie. And
She wrote fiction
I have a son.
Yeah, well, it certainly is a
character.
look at these apples.
So I read many of her books, and she does a lot
A volunteer?
of research.
Anyone want to point out other plants? Can I get a reader? All right, so we're reading this one.
Okay.
Referring to those pink flowers
Rose
over there.
checker mallow or wild hollyhock. Cultural, ecological, historical significance. This is a primary nectar source for several pollinator species, including the threatened fungus-free butterfly.
Yeah, keep an eye out for butterflies. I've seen a lot of butterflies this year. Really pretty cool. I don't know my butterflies in that. Lepidoptera. Yeah. But they're out here.
And these little blue flowers are black, but I don't.
a big one is like red. Wow, look at this.
That's a bunch.
We've got Lauren having a senior moment on the
Are you one of the OSU people?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay. So how long you been doing this?
So I've been helping a little bit with this for about 2-3 years, but just mostly what I can do in supporting Charlotte and Zach. But my role is I'm a tree fruit specialist, so I'm more on that side of things.
Okay.
But,
Studying for that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
I like it.
Yeah, me and my wife, we just recently joined the gardening clubs. We haven't officially paid the membership dues, but we plan to. But it's really good to join the garden clubs and get to know how to be self-sustainable,
Oh, yeah.
especially in these times.
Oh, agreed. Where are you at?
We're in Gaston. I don't know if you know where that is.
A little farther north?
Yeah, it's south of the Forest Grove
Okay, yeah. Nice.
It's like 9 miles south of Forest Grove.
Okay, I know where you mean now. No, it's a beautiful area for gardening.
Oh, out there it is too. Yeah, it's a bunch of good garden areas.
Yeah.
It's a native species. It's fragrant.
Very nice, a lot of these chats. You don't know if he's just being casual or if he's getting ready to give us some
Yeah.
information.
Yeah, that's I feel the same way.
Well, Joel and I are big history buffs. Well, you know, we grew up kind of like, lost sheep, you might say, and not really knowing our history. You know, we were
They're in the same family, so it makes sense. It has a similar
All the locals eat it. I don't think
Oh, you dropped it.
What did I drop? Oh, not me.
Not you. Oh, no.
And so I'm like, what is that?
We'll find out. No, I don't think there's much.
You almost came out of your skin.
Oh yeah, that's.
One side of the fence planted blackberries. I'm like, what? I know.
Oh, that was intentional.
No different.
Oh yeah, they just be.
He's like, we got chickens and dogs. Please don't spray. I said, dude, I cut it all off and threw it over the stump. First year, this year, I'm spraying.
Yeah, exactly. That's natural barbed wire. You know how hard to get rid of it is? It's nearly impossible because once it get in the roots, it's a wrap.
They just let it grow wild around here. That's what these things. We go to Chick-fil-A parking lot. There's rosemary in the parking lot.
Yeah, we just go and pluck them.
It smells like rain.
We was in Tiger one day in a neighborhood. It's just a wild cherry tree, just fruit. We just go walk down the sidewalk and pluck it.
Urban farmers.
So, from where we are right now, if you look right there, you see that there's a fence that suddenly comes in from where this tall thicket of trees is right there. That fence marks the change in the boundary between what was the Davis homestead and the Carson homestead. So now we have all officially stepped onto what was part of Letitia and David's homestead. So we had to walk all the way from the road out to here just to get onto the land that actually belonged to Letitia and David. Yes. But now we're here, right? And so you can officially say, like, this is the everyday world of Letitia circa 1846 through 1852. 53. Like, this is where she lives from this point down to where we're going to go. And this is also the site of that native garden that we described. I wish I knew more about the plants that we have found that are here that we believe were cultivated intentionally by the native peoples who were here. We don't really know much about what the relationship was between Letitia Carson and some of the Kalapuya-speaking peoples that were here before her. Most of them had already been moved onto the Coast Indian Reservation at that point, but there were still native people who were around in town, or in some cases were working for other families. So she certainly would have seen some of the original inhabitants of this place, and hopefully would have learned a little bit about some of the plants that we've been pointing out all this time, and maybe even been able to use them as part of her ordinary cooking for her family, right? Mm-hmm. So this is the world that she knew. And I want you to start thinking about home, right? Because now that we're on what is part of her home, I want you to think about what home means to you, right? How do you know when you're there? How do you know when you're at your home? Just try to think of those things, and there's a spot up ahead where we're going to get to actually sit. And when we do get to sit down, that's when I want to hear from you about what it actually means to be home. And I encourage you to think about all 5 of your senses. All right, what does home feel like? What does it smell like? What does it look like? What does it taste like? So keep those in your mind as we keep going. Okay?
Did the Davis family live on their homestead at the same time as Letitia?
They did.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, I think home sites were only a few hundred yards away. Bob, do you know where the Davis home was?
Well, the first one, they moved it to Tampico, but where the division between the properties, Letitia was on one side, Davis was on the other,
Yeah.
and the Applegate Trail was there. One of the other things they had was pasturage, so everybody traveling the trails needed pasturage for their horses and that. So probably an overnight stay would be pretty common.
Yeah.
Yeah, Davis turned out, he had the store and was selling things directly, and probably products that Letitia was making, cheese
Right.
and cream and so on.
Even when we think about this era and know that it has changed so much, people were never really lonely out here. You know, no one was ever really alone. Even if they didn't see their neighbor's house, people went and visited each other pretty often. They had reason to get to know each other because, oh, my horse ran away, or like, I'm looking for my cow, right? You had to go to your neighboring property pretty often. And that became really important later in life for Letitia, because when she became displaced from this land and decided to bring a lawsuit about the loss of that land, she called upon her neighbors to testify about her presence here and the fact that she was an owner of property. And they did show up in court and give their testimony in Letitia's favor. So it's good to know your neighbors. Yeah. All right. I see that our friends up ahead are still sitting down. What do you think we ought to do, Lauren? Should we stall a little bit? What are you thinking about? What questions do you have?
Yeah.
What's on your mind? Oh, you're all already experts? You have no questions?
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I didn't know about the event. So she was one of the first Black pioneers. Do you know, like, how far away was she from other Black folks? Like, where else were they?
That's a good question. So let's see. When Letitia arrived with David and her newborn daughter, Martha, the nearest Black family or individuals would have been the Gormans. Hannah and Eliza Gorman already lived in Corvallis in 1844. They moved to Corvallis. So that's not that far, right? But this was at a time when the 1850 census, Oregon's first census that was taken, there were only 55 Black people in the entire Oregon country, which includes all of today's state of Oregon, plus Washington, parts of Idaho and Montana, and all of British Columbia, right? So 55 Black people counted in 1850, and Letitia got here more than 5 years before. So you can imagine that even though she might have had a couple of people within her immediate proximity that she could have seen and had some sort of shared experience with, overall, this was a region that was almost entirely devoid of African cultural traditions and anything that she might have been more accustomed to in Missouri, where she was coming from. You had a hand up?
Oh yeah, I think she may have answered some of my questions, but I was asking, as far as Corvallis, what was the race, ethnicity, or culture in that time compared to what is now, and what was the land usage of this area in Corvallis back then compared to what they use it for Corvallis now?
Well, Corvallis was originally called Marysville. It was founded at the confluence of Marys River and the Willamette River, and it was meant to be a source of trade and industry, river crossing, right? That's why the town developed. But everything outside of the immediate boundaries of town was really just about agricultural production. People were here, they were yeoman farmers, they produced enough for themselves and maybe to sell a little bit to their neighbors, and then they would take it to places like Corvallis to sell. So it was a very small community at that time, but the people that lived in town or had reason to go to town all pretty much knew each other. Yeah, which might still be the same way.
Jack Carson was born here. He was the first Black person born in Benton County.
That's true.
And so in 1849, he was born. But when they settled here, they were the furthest south, but almost immediately people were going further south into Eugene and Corvallis areas. But this was, I think, the furthest south donation land claim. It was called not a donation land claim, it's called a provisional
claim.
Yep.
Yeah.
and so this one, the further south, they settled up around French Prairie and Washington County, and they were just coming down here, but they kept going. So it was transitional. They were the furthest for maybe a week.
Yeah.
I was wondering, on the Gormans, do they have any evidence of what they did for, like, what was their trade, or what they do in town?
Yeah.
And then with, because
Okay.
when it was Marysville, it was flooded out and they moved the town, correct? Just before or after the...
Yeah, you're right. I think the original, like, Marys, both sides of the Marys River, and then it moved further, I guess, west to where it is today. Yeah. And the Gormans, so they were enslaved when they came to Oregon, were working on the home of a guy named Colonel Thorpe's residence, but when he died, they received their freedom and then went to Corvallis Town, and Hannah and Eliza both became laundresses, seamstresses. They had a business, they had a house. The house is still there. Yeah. Okay. All right, we gotta move. Hi, Dennis.
We got a Dennis.
How's Pepper holding it? How's Pepper holding it?
Fine. Well, they're carrying her.
Oh, that's good.
Just wanted to give her a little exercise.
Oh, yeah.
She's like 50 old and bonded. And, but it's here after 2 or 3 months.
But y'all are here because sometimes it can feel that way with like not having black people for like 50-something miles away from I saw y'all and I was like,
Hi, I'm Joel. Nice to meet you. What's your name?
I'm Krisha.
Krisha, nice to meet you.
Thanks.
Where did you drive from?
Came in from Eugene, Angie.
Oh, okay. We went to Eugene not too long ago.
We went out there where they had a Black Partners event.
About housing for the Eugene area.
Okay, and Krisha, and I'm gonna tell you what happened. What happened was we wasn't supposed to be in there.
It was one old lady.
But the table, they had a table talk, you know, panel talk or whatever, and they were
Come on in and grab a seat anywhere you like, okay?
Do we have enough seats for everyone? Goodness.
It's an oak tree.
If anyone can stand and you would prefer to stand, feel free to make sure that everybody who really needs a seat can have one. All right. Cool. I'm going to set this down. So we talked a lot about plants, we talked about this place, we talked about indigenous peoples. I think it's a really good time to at least bring up more about the Letitia Carson story, the historical Letitia, right? So I've mentioned that she came here in 18 is when she crossed the Oregon Trail with David Carson. Letitia, of course, was a black woman. She was enslaved in Missouri. We know from census documents taken later in her life that she was born in Kentucky, but truthfully, the first 30-odd years of her life, we really don't know anything about what she was up to, what her experiences were, whether she had a family, right? Those things are still a mystery to us. And it's challenging because it's only through other people's voices that we learn about Letitia Carson. We don't have her own writings anywhere that we can point to. She never kept a diary of her experiences. So we have to try to fill in the gaps in our knowledge with what we can see from historical sources and from our understanding of other things that were going on here at that time. But Letitia, as a person born into slavery, presumably still enslaved at the time she left Missouri with David on the Oregon Trail, and when they left, she was 9 months pregnant.
Oh,
So
wow.
Letitia and David, based on that timeline, would have had to have been together sometime around like September of 1844, because we do know that he was the father of her unborn child. And she gave birth on the Oregon Trail in what is today Nebraska in May of 1845. No, May's when they left. It's June. It was in June. So they set off that early summer, and from what we learned later, there was some decision that David came to whereby he decided to give Letitia her freedom. Now, what motivated him to do that? It could have had something to do with the changing laws in Oregon related to slavery. So in Oregon at that time when they had left on the Oregon Trail, it was legal for black people to be held as slaves in Oregon for up to 3 years. And then after 3 years, black women would have to be emancipated, and then they would have to leave Oregon or face the penalty of being physically beaten until they did leave. So that was the law of the land, right? David probably saw that and said, all right, well, I need Letitia to help me get this farm started, right? She's got expertise that I need, I can depend on. I need her to help me build my home. And then after that, I know that she's going to have to leave. So let me go ahead and give her her freedom, and we'll enter into some sort of an agreement where she can be a free person, but I can still utilize her services for the next 3 years, right? It just so happened that while they were on the Oregon Trail, that 1845 law was, or 1844 law was actually repealed. So now there was no obligation for black people to have to leave Oregon anymore. But it also meant that slavery was legal again, because when you repeal the law, you repeal the whole thing, not just a part of it. So Letitia's status and the changing dynamics of the status of black people in Oregon was totally up in the air. It was changing all the time. People weren't really sure what would happen. There were grace periods. It was all very confusing. But what we do know is that for whatever reason, David did decide to give Letitia her freedom on this journey. And then he agreed with her that if she were to work for him for the remainder of his life, he would give her his land upon his death. And that was the agreement that they made with one another, and Letitia accepted. She has her child, and the three of them are traveling, making their way to Oregon. Also on that journey, Letitia used some money, we don't know where it came from, but she had some money of her own, and she used it to buy a cow. And that cow would eventually breed all the cattle that would become Letitia's. And when they were here with, over 30 head of cattle, more than 20 of them were, descended from that original cow that Letitia owned. And so they were Letitia's cattle. So she was already thinking about her future opportunities that she was going to need for herself, right? At the moment she received her freedom, the first thing she was thinking about is, what am I going to do to provide a future for my baby daughter, right? And she saw this as her way to do that, with owning some property of her own. Probably the first thing she ever actually owned in her entire life was this cow. So they make their way to Oregon. They get here in the winter of 1845. They winter probably in Oregon City or maybe in Fort Vancouver. We're not really sure. And then in spring 1846, they come down here together and they settle on this very land where we're standing right now. And they proceed to build a homestead on this 640 acres, which I mentioned before was later reduced to 320. And for much of the next almost 7 years, they lived as a pretty typical Willamette Valley farm family. They had another child, a son named Adam, who later changed his name a couple times, who was born here in 1852, first black child born in Benton County. And they grew produce, they grew vegetables, they made milk and cheese here, and they took care of all their livestock. And things were probably pretty okay. Feels a little bit like a normal life in a way that Letitia would not have been accustomed to. Yes.
I don't know if you guys are Christian or anything, but I just think it's just no coincidence that you say he was the first black person and his name is Adam. I just think it's coincidental to like the Bible, the first man on earth, his name was Adam.
He later changed his name to Andrew after his uncle by his father. I guess he must have really took a liking to him and changed his name to Andrew. But yeah, that's a cool plot. I never thought about that. So his father, David Carson, Irish immigrant, maybe had some experience in the fur trade, did a little bit of homesteading, had a sort of a whole checkered past. Some good things, some bad things. But they were here together and lived as a family. And David became sick in late 1852, and he passed away. And it was unexpected. Now, remember, he had made that agreement with Letitia. If she were to work with him for the remainder of his life, then she would be given his property. Well, he never actually got around to writing that down. And that was a mistake. And so after he died, an administrator of his estate was appointed. It was a neighbor, a man named Greenberry Smith. And Smith's job was to figure out, all right, well, David's got all these debts. We've got to settle these debts and determine who is going to inherit this property that they live on and all the things that they had accumulated together. And so he had to figure out who were David's heirs. And he named David's living relatives in North Carolina and Missouri, but didn't name Letitia or his two children that were here with him. And presumably it's because, well, we know he thought that it was because as black people, they must have been David's slaves and therefore weren't entitled to this, or there was no such agreement and they weren't entitled to owning property under Oregon law anyway. So there was all these different things that David offered as a rebuttal for why he shouldn't have to recognize them as Letitia, or as David's true heirs. So Letitia in 1853, January, so you can imagine it's probably cold, maybe even snowing right here, they had a probate auction where they sold everything that the couple owned. Everything they had accumulated together as a household was sold to the highest bidder. And it was purchased by all their neighbors who came out to buy everything from cattle to tools to David's underwear. They sold everything that they had. And the only thing that Letitia was able to keep were the items that she herself could purchase. So she had to buy back her own things. And the things that she chose to purchase were some cookware, 2 head of cattle, wash tubs, and some clothes and bedding.
Bad.
Yeah. And that was it. And after that, she had to try to make it on her own. So we don't know if she walked out of this land or if she was given a ride, but she made her way about 7 miles to what is today the community of Jefferson, Oregon, where she moved in with a white family and became their domestic servant for the next several years. And when that family, a year later, decided to go to Southern Oregon, Letitia and her 2 children went with them. And she would live the rest of her life in Douglas County, Oregon, near Roseburg, closer to Myrtle Creek. But she was determined to seek justice for the wrongs that had been committed against her. And thinking about the fact that she had lost cattle that she had actually brought into this world, she wanted to be compensated for that. And furthermore, she wanted to be the agreement that she made with David to be sawn through. And so she somehow became acquainted with an attorney in Corvallis named Andrew Thayer. We don't know how they came to know each other, but Thayer filed a lawsuit on behalf of Letitia in the Benton County Probate Court to sue Greenberry Smith as the administrator of her late common-law husband's estate for the non-performance of this contract, essentially. She had given him 7 years of service, and she had nothing to show for it. So she had said that she needed to have some compensation. She needed back wages for the work that she had done on David's property, or the cost of the property itself. And then she sued a second time for the loss of her cattle, which had been sold illegally by Smith. And I mentioned Smith said, well, she can't do this because she's actually a slave, and she's doing this because she loved David and it was a family relationship, but they weren't married, so they're not entitled to anything. He brought all of these different reasons why he shouldn't have to have compensated her. And they held 2 trials, and in both trials, all white juries made up of Letitia's neighbors here in the Soap Creek Valley found in her favor and said that she did deserve compensation for these things. Now, after court costs, we're not talking about a huge amount of money, but nonetheless, this was almost unprecedented for a black person to take a white person to court in territory era Oregon. And it only ever happened maybe once or twice before this, and certainly never by a black woman. But she won those cases, and the money that she earned was what she used to start her new homestead in Southern Oregon, where she would live until shortly before her death in 1888. And on that land, she had 158.5 acres, I think, of her own land, and she planted over 100 fruit trees and had hogs and had a granary and a smokehouse and got to live a little bit of that life again. So I really love this story because we see the seesawing effect. You know, Letitia, born into slavery, never really knowing the potential of her own life until she came here and got to experience a little bit of it. And then even after that was taken away from her, she still had the resilience to seek it out again. And she was successful and got to see out the end of her life on land that belonged to her, that she had made possible and had been such an important person for her community as a midwife and as a market farmer and someone that people could trust at a time when these sorts of things weren't supposed to exist for black people in Oregon. And this is why we remember her story. And that story began here. So while she could never come back to this land after she was displaced from it in 1853, a part of her is always going to be here. And when we can come back to this place and remember that story, then that story will live on as long as we remember to tell it to other people.